Hi guys, welcome to Cinema Express. Today I'm chatting with the creators of Eternally Confused and Eager for Love. It's Netflix's wonderfully kooky comedy about a confused 20-something and his truth-dropping teaching.
He has no friends.
I have friends.
That Varun is also there.
2 friends.
I have the makers with me here. I want to begin with this, guys. I started watching the show and I was pretty much sold on the line when Wiz goes, when Pushpa comes to shove. And I think it was a delightfully awesome English pun, and we've not done English this wonderfully in a while. I want to know first with Rahul, who cracked this, and how did you get all these wonderful people to sign off on this very distinct brand of humor that the show has?
I think that was a combination of the two of us. Yeah, in the moment. Yeah. I don't think that was a written line. That was an improvised line.
Right.
So that's the first answer to the first question. And then the second question is a bit more, I don't know how I got them all involved. It's a bit surreal that they're all sitting here next to me, at least the producers. But in terms of the cast, I mean, yeah, we went through the regular auditioning process and we got everyone that we love.
I'm glad you noticed the when Pushpa comes to shove line, because there are these little jokes that are sprinkled through that aren't, because it's not, if you make a joke with other people in the scene, then they have to react. But since this is a joke only in his head, so many of them I feel just come and go with no emphasis or underliningness, or that, hey, that was a joke, did you see the joke? You know, so I'm glad you noticed.
I want to ask Farhan, Zoya and Reema this. What were your first impressions of Vihan in character? And also, like, how do you break it to him? Like, hey man, you got the part, you're the most virgin looking young lad we could find. How did you guys get him on board? Yeah.
He just glowed with virginity.
I think for us, Rahul had tested so many people, and the casting was key. So when I saw the test, I think I was like, I think we found the guy.
Right.
It was pretty much like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think an interesting thing was that he auditioned for the role in Feb of 2020, and then he didn't know what happened, and pretty much 8 months passed in lockdown, and then we informed him in September that he was going to get a callback. So I think that was possibly the longest anyone would have waited between an audition and a callback. But yeah, I think once we watched it, we knew that he was pretty much the guy. It was just about just knowing for sure. I think it just once everyone watched it, everyone just knew. Yeah.
It was lovely being the voice in his head, only because he gives you so much to work with in the scene. Little eye movements, the pauses in between lines where you really feel that he's thinking, or he's been slightly distracted, or he's trying to ignore and stay in the conversation. He's done all of this. It's there. So you can time the lines consequently with the tiny, tiny little changes that he's done all through the scenes. So it was a pleasure. I didn't get to actually work with him, but I did get to work with him in a way.
Zay, what do you think of Vihan? And also because so much of it, exudes from just how he is in a scene rather than what's he doing.
I mean, Ray had to be immensely likable, immensely charming, and at the same time, an actor enough to carry off that wicked insecurity and anxiety that he did, and he had all of it. He was. I was a bit worried about the casting of Ray because the whole show rests on him, and it's a tricky casting. But the minute I think everybody felt that when we saw his test, there was relief. Like, you knew you found the guy. You can't help but like him. He's just.
What was he told to
likable.
do in his test? What was he told to do? Did he do a scene, or what was he supposed to be?
Yeah, he did scenes. He read scenes.
Yeah.
But tell me, this show made me think, when you were making Dil Chahta and Laksh back in the day, and these were also, in their own right, urban coming of age stories, at least the first part of these stories. The world was different back then. This was pre-dating apps, so many things. And when you look at youngsters today navigating relationships, dating, sexuality, things like that, what do you think has fundamentally changed? Do you think it's more challenging for them? Do you think it's more trickier now, more tense for them with the world simultaneously opening up and shrinking around them?
Yeah, actually we were just talking to someone earlier, and Rahul actually put it really, really well. He said with the changing world, what's also become more easily to happen is to be rejected more easily. So that's something that's changed hugely with the social scene. But I mean, coming back to films like you mentioned, I mean, being confused really is a part of growing up. Not everyone has clarity of thought from a very young age of themselves to start with, much less the world, of who they are, what really truly what defines them. And if I had to go back to a character like Saif, for example, who's the confused one, in Dil Chahta Hai, I think Jim replaces the voices of Amir and Akshay in his head. They were the voices who were constantly pulling him in two different directions. And so you've always had that, whether it's external or internal. We all have an internal monologue going on constantly. It's really, really done. So you relate to it. I mean, when you watch the show, you can absolutely relate to it. And that's what I feel about it.
They usually in most shows you put the angel and the devil on either shoulder, right? The angel will be here and the devil will be here, and they'll have two different voices and they'll look different. But the fact of the matter is that they actually have one voice, and they both are inside of your head. And that's what I really liked about it.
On that note, I had to ask you this. Whenever we have these characters, they're also, often animated, or there's a reference point for that. Jim, when you're working with it, Wiz is largely static, and yet you feel the dynamics of them. There's a character scene when Ray flings him across the room, and next morning he's furious that you were violent with me and things like that. I almost felt I was watching two characters in a scene, although he interacts with us through just the totem and just the sketches of him. How do you guys crack this dynamism? I'm sure you were in the studio recording, so how did this work out? How did you guys go about the recording for these scenes?
I think because we recorded it first on set with someone giving cues, so Vihan was able to perform it with having someone opposite him, and then we removed those cues carefully, and Jim arrived and was able to just enter this person's head. And I think what was very fun about that was because there's nobody else, it was just the two of us and the sound engineer, we were able to decide what Ray would think, even if someone like maybe Vihan perhaps was like, I would not think that. We were making our own decisions. So we were inside Ray's head for about 20 days of dubbing, and we got a lot of good content that is not even in the show. We recorded so much. We recorded too much.
Yeah, it's like that thing we were talking about of being spoiled for choice. And having that actually cause more anxiety than make you feel more relaxed. I think he was stuck with that after the sessions, because it was a lot of fun trying to see what we could fit in the time that's there. And I personally really enjoy a limitation, because if there's no limitation, you can do anything. You can talk for 5 minutes. It can be. But when I know it's 1.5 seconds, or when it's 2.5 seconds, and now within this, what can we fit? And infinity, they say, is on the head of a pen, so you can still have infinite choices of what he could be thinking during that time. It just would have to connect with how he's responding. So some lines absolutely couldn't be played with, because it's an immediate cue that has an immediate response. But apart from that, I feel we had a good time kind of remixing it and joking around and seeing what cracked us up, and something would crack him up, and then he'd give a suggestion, and then I'd spend some time laughing, and then I'd try to fit it in. It was great. It was fun.
Also imagine, like, thoughts are free of all restriction, right? You can think anything. You don't have to act on it. But there's no morality to a thought. You can think anything that you want. So it must be very interesting to just let it go anywhere.
It was.
Right. You mentioned there's an episode called A Blind Date, and it made me realize that you often don't need the highest of stakes to make something suspenseful or dramatic. With a guy like Ray, going to dinner with someone could be like a battlefield of tension for him. As screenwriters, do you feel that you're able to? Do you think that drama can actually come from anywhere, from any scenario? Almost anything can be dramatized in life if you really look closely to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You just need a good writer. Yeah.
You just need a good writer, actually. I think when once you kind of set a character, you build a character's world, an inner world, and then if that character hooks you, then whatever their conflict is, big or small, you're invested. You're taken on that journey with them if you have kind of fallen for them. In the first 10 minutes, if you're with the character, you're in their world.
I really think it's, it depends on the writer and obviously the scenario that you're trying to write. I think that a given, a good writer can build drama from anything.
Reema needs to break for lunch.
Right.
There's only one thought going on in her head right now.
Yeah,
Right.
lunchtime.
I remember Excel was one of the first movers when the OTT boom happened, and now Tiger's Baby making some wild, awesome, exciting swings online as well. I'm really excited for your Archie's adaptation that's also been announced. I want to know, what has web enabled you guys to do that, let's say, 20 years almost of mainstream filmmaking? Beyond that, what you guys able to explore now as creators, as producers, as writers, everything? Or what has web enabled you guys to do that maybe wasn't there before?
First thing it's done is it's enabled us to watch a lot of content that we didn't really easily have access to, global content from all over. So that's been amazing. It's allowed us to find a home for ideas that may not have traditionally found a space in the theatrical mainstream world. Ideas that lend themselves to short films. Like, I could never make lust stories into a feature film, my segment there, and it's possibly my favorite film, and I had the opportunity to put it on Netflix. Whether it was telling long format stories, where you need those many hours to develop characters and to get your point across, and it's a world that can keep living in different seasons. And it's helped to not have a certain amount of censorship, to be able to explore themes that are not really considered mainstream in that sense, to be able to work in different language, to be able to it's freedom. And also to be able to work with the new cast and crew. It just lends itself to different people you can collaborate with, and to be seen globally. I mean, there's just no loss to it. There's only win. My experience has been only winning.
Yeah, I completely agree with Zoya. The thing is, when you sit down to write, you're already thinking of, the world, of course, that you're creating, and what is possible and not possible in that world. What could characters do and what is impossible that they would not do. To add to that, if you have to start thinking of, what are people sitting in that place going to think, of this person? Will somebody come? You know what I mean? So those things are things that we put onto ourselves when we're sitting and writing. And this kind of lifts that weight off you. You can be absolutely true to the world that you want to create. You don't have to stop to think about, is it palatable for everyone? Will it work in so-and-so place? Does it need songs? Like all those questions that usually keep coming into your head when you're making something in that popular feature format, or then in a GEC format. So this kind of lifts that weight off you, and it gives you a certain freedom to be able to be more true to what you're writing.
And I feel somewhere it's taken us back to a time where people, like the audience, was not that invested in box office. Like when we were growing up, we watched stuff and then you liked it or you didn't like it. You were a fan or you weren't. It didn't matter. Like now, I've grown up and there were films I've absolutely loved, and I've realized much later that movie didn't do well at all, but it stayed with me. It's become a cult film and you don't really care, and I think that's what OTT has done. It's suddenly like separating the wheat from the chaff. Everyone's just like, is this working? Is this actor amazing? Is this story good? It's not mattering if on a larger scale what anyone thinks or doesn't, and I think that's really, really good.
Yeah, also, I think that, when you say OTT, people have now identified as long format, but they're also producing films. So there was a kind of film, like a medium budget film, which may not have made sense because of the content. Maybe it wasn't universal enough. The budget was, it wasn't a low budget film. Those films had no option but to get shelved, But today they can get made because of OTT platforms like Netflix.
There's a very, almost meta, bittersweet thing in the show that I like, that Rahul and Suchitra are the parents. And I grew up at a time when, let's say, Suchitra was there in Dil Chahta Hai, as Priya over there. And Rahul, I remember in the late 90s, early aughts, he would be that urban guy, who's unable to get some and who's struggling. Did just watching the show and watching this new generation take over, did it also give you a sense of like time that, okay, now this is like the new world now?
Are you old is what he's asking. Do you feel old?
You feel old, yeah, absolutely. You're right, yes.
Thanks, Jim.
Are you answering for me? Are you still answering for me?
Is it?
No, Zoya answered.
Yeah, Zoya feels old. The rest of us don't.
Great. Rahul, anything?
No, I was just going to say that I mean, from my perspective, I grew up watching Dil Chahta Hai, and then I watched Honeymoon Travels, and then I watched Luck by Chance and Zindagi and Dil Dharakne Do, and so it was very interesting for me to actually then end up working with these people, and even from their perspectives, because I think they were very aware on set, Suchitra and Rahul, that they had played not similar roles, but they had been in similar sort of content many years earlier, and now they get to be like the parents advising the young generation. So I felt like even on a personal level, they were able to impart that to me as a creator, and also to Vihan and Ray in the show.
Does someone have a very obvious whiz in their lives? We obviously have friends who push us, or who confront us with tiny ambitions and things like that. Do any of you can directly think of someone who's very much a whiz in your life?
I think it's more the voices in our heads, it is for me, as opposed to another person.
I have a fantasy that, if I had a voice in my head, and it would be a Jedi. Like, I think Yoda would be my guiding force, but it's only me.
Yeah, I agree with what Reema said. It's kind of that thing that I said earlier of the angel and the devil on your shoulder. There's somebody that's guiding you that seems to know better, and there's also somebody that seems to know much worse, than you think. And it just depends on what the environmental circumstances are for which voice you wind up following, or which voice speaks the loudest. And I really do like the idea of it just being one, and it sounding the same, and it being indistinguishable, and you just kind of have to, if you listen to it, you just have to face whatever the consequences might be, and that's just that.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. All the best for the series. I'm really looking forward to catching more episodes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye.